Almost all aircraft problems can trace itself back to the aircraft's electronics. Despite what you may think, the technology that keeps a plane's magic going is older than it seems. These fixes are also harder than they seem and involve such adventures as untangling years' worth of neglected wires. This is Angry Oodles of Noodles. Our guest today is a former Marine helicopter mechanic turned avionics technician. She's currently working as a general aviation tech. Please welcome La Coyote. Hey, hello.
Welcome.
Hi, guys. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, thanks for coming on. Honestly, we haven't had an actual certified avionics tech for a minute now.
I mean, I don't know what certified means, but yeah.
She's like, certified, cough.
Working at a repair station.
It's okay. Sorry. It works. Yeah. Certified. Absolutely. Roll it, boss. All right. Oh my gosh. Avionics. Like the intro says, I can attest that 99% of all aircraft related problems boil down to avionics. Would you say that's a fair assessment, everybody?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say it's probably at least 95% of it.
And the worst part about it all is it's never an easy fix. It's always like some kind of like side quest shit that derails you from the main story. You know what I mean? So La Coyote, tell us a little bit about you real fast. Like, where are you from? Where you hail from?
I'm originally from Carson City, Nevada. But I spent, some of my life in Washington State, grew up, joined the Marine Corps, was stationed in California and Hawaii, traveled all over the place as comes with military service, and lived in South Carolina for a while. And now I hail from the Great South. I'm not going to specify where, but
rhymes with.
Rhymes with.
Rhymes with Las Vegas. No, I'm just I'm being stupid.
Rhymes with Las Vegas.
See, I'm from the other end of the country. So when you said the Great South, I was thinking the Southeast.
Oh, I do live in the Southeast. I'm just being a smartass.
Oh, okay. I was like, well, I guess it is South technically, but I'm thinking of the other end of the country. That's funny.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
Like when you hear stuff like Nevada, Arizona, you think more of the West than South anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I actually do live in the deep South, and it's growing up, in the desert and with desert people who get plenty of vitamin D. It's kind of a strange thing living in the South and interacting with Southern people. I'm surprised I don't have heart disease yet because the food is so good down here. So.
Oh yeah, the obesity rates through the roof, but it's for good reason.
Oh yeah, man. I'm talking like they make creamed corn with lard and all kinds of good stuff. I mean,
yeah, you'll die at 50, but you'll die with a smile on your face. You know what I mean?
I'm going to die happy and with bacon. So yeah.
So being from the West and having traveled all over, what planted you in the South, the dirty South?
The dirty South. My best friend lives down here, and I was married to a Marine, and that didn't work out. So I was like, well, where do I go now? And I just ended up here and kind of walked right into general aviation the next day. So.
Oh, nice. So you working on like smaller Cessnas and things like that? Are you working the corporate jets or?
A little bit of both. I work on pretty much anything Textron, whether it be Citations or, CJs, King Airs, Hawkers, you name it.
Oh, yeah. Worked on all those as well. Out of those that you've worked, would you say that Hawkers are probably the most nightmarish to work on?
Just because of the limited amount of lightning holes on them and, where you can and can't route wires to. Yeah, no, that's probably, I recently did a Wi-Fi install on a Hawker, and it was a challenge, man. Just getting, because, the GoGo Wi-Fi system is.
God, that's a crap system, isn't it? The GoGo system is crap.
It's so terrible. And
yeah,
it's, 14 coaxes, and you put in, 8 tiny little Wi-Fi antennas in the cabin of a Hawker. It seems a little bit overkill, but just figuring out how to route those is is a nightmare.
So you get to do the installs and the routing. I got to do the troubleshooting on the other end. So there's many a night at 3 a.m. sitting on a ramp, and I'm on the phone with support services or whatever, trying to figure out and get wiring diagrams and trying to figure out what's going on with the system. And I'm not going to lie to you, probably 8 out of 10 times it end up just being left on the MEL list.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you get well versed with tech support when you start doing installs, because we're the guys that also do configuration for these systems. And having not had an avionics background. I mean, when I started in avionics in general aviation, I showed up and the guy that was training me was like, "Do you know how to strip a wire?" And I was like, "What?"
Strip wires? What?
Yeah, what? Give me a hammer and I'll show you what I know how to do with it. But no, I had no idea what was going on as far as avionics. I couldn't even tell you what ADF or VOR or ILS or any of that stuff did. So there's some companies that we do installs for that their tech reps hate me, but other companies, you gain a rapport with them, and you learn a lot of knowledge from those guys if you build a good working relationship with them. So
that's very interesting, because I've had the similar experience with that as well, where you in the general aviation realm, you can make or break your career by how you work alone, right? You can call in and they know your voice and like, "Oh yeah, we'll help you out real quick." Or if you're not well liked, like you get left on hold for a while.
Oh yeah, and there's some guys in general aviation and avionics installs that they have no interpersonal skills, because you're stuck in a cockpit 5 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day by yourself doing these installs. So I think a couple of guys I've worked with are just abrasive because of it. But yeah, once building that good rapport with those tech reps really can help you save your career and boost you into the scene.
Yeah. So are you working at like a service center?
I'm working on a repair station right now. So I'm not, I'm kind of a noob at this, but yeah, I'm working on a repair station. We do all kinds of service work. We do phases and on-call maintenance, aircraft on ground installs is my forte though. Nice.
If you get a chance and you feel like traveling just a little bit, jump on that AOG, which is the aircraft on ground maintenance cruise. It's long hours and a lot of work, but it's a lot more fun, and you get out get to see some different things and kind of working on the road a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a little bit of AOG work because we've done installs on planes where the owners just absolutely didn't want to wait for us to, give our 100%, but it's still safe for flight considered. So they would go back to their home station and I'd have to drive all the way out to them and work on their plane more in an unfamiliar place like Alabama, for instance. Have driven down there multiple times, and I will tell you the only good thing that I've experienced in Alabama is the barbecue. So if you can avoid that place, do so.
There's one plus in all of that. I feel like we kind of touched a little bit about our lemon law episode there, MVP, where like you fix it just enough to leave your place and hopefully never come back again.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of that is avionics related or electric related, and it's just so mind boggling. And for everyone else out there, if a plane may seem like this big magical creature that has like the latest and greatest tech, it really isn't.
No, it's ancient technology for the most part.
You would be amazed, like especially some of the planes myself and the El Coyote over here have worked on. Some of the latest and greatest technology is like in like PlayStation 1 stuff, and not even like the good PlayStation stuff. It's just it turns on, it has the cool little logo, and then it just blips. I'm like, well, there we go.
It was a miracle when Skid Kids got the heads up display on the upgrades. We were pretty stoked about that.
Oh my god, heads up display! What does that mean?
We were like, this is magic.
Well, so I was going to tie in with talking about ancient technology and this and that, and like, so Coyote, working in the general aviation, you got to load maps every 30 days, and a lot of your citations or a lot of the operators, they still have the old floppy disk in them. And it's like 10 to 15 grand depending on the jet to upgrade to the USB. adapter. So none of the operators want to spend that money to upgrade it to that. So you're still searching for floppy disks, trying to find the last remaining somewhere in the world, cutting those SOBs. And then you go and load the floppy disk. And then you get all the way, and there's like 10 disks, right? And you got to load those biatches in there. And then you get all the way to 95%. And it's like, oh, floppy disk error, file corrupted. No. And you have to start over from scratch. You just want to blow your brains out in the middle of the ramp. And
you're screaming at your jet, and all the mechanics are watching. You're like, oh, they're at it again. Those avionics guys.
They're like trying to load maps. Yeah, we know. Talk about the ancient technology and the wiring. So have you had to do one of the upgrades for that, swapping a floppy disk reader to the USB? Is that pretty in depth, or is it?
Most of what I do is my installations. Well, when I first started, it was the ADSB in and out upgrade that the FAA mandated. In that, we were pumping out planes left and right. On citations, the most extensive upgrades that I've done on that are GTN installations, Garmin GTN 750, 650. So that's a major overhaul, and that takes usually like a completely old school cockpit and turns it into a quasi glass cockpit. As far as, floppy disk loading, I haven't encountered any systems where, I've had to really do that. In the citations, mostly I'm working, with the Primus systems. So they're not that out of date particularly. But, in King Airs, we usually go from, the old Avidyne systems or whatever to the G1000, which is a completely glass cockpit. So
yeah, those G1000s are pretty nice.
Yeah, the major overhauls. And the cool thing about what I do is I even fabricate the wiring harnesses, which is my favorite part is to fabricate the harnesses because I'm particularly OCD about it. And I like to make it look pretty. Like we pull it off the board in the shop and it literally stands on its own because I'm on top of the wiring board like a mad person, string tying as hard as I can on that thing. So.
Yeah, doing those clove hitches, holding them all together, making sure the pins are correct when you strip. Mm-hmm. And so you have Garmin or whatever, or whoever will send, or let's say Citation, you'll get from Textron the wiring diagram and locations, and you'll have to measure out the harnesses yourself, and you do all that. You build them from essentially taking it off the wire spool and to install. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can actually make a really you could even do that as a side business. So a couple of friends of mine out here that I worked with, his wife, she's really good and she does the same thing like you're doing. And then she made such a name for herself that she started picking up contracts on the side. And it's gotten to the point now where she just does it in her garage. They send her their diagrams, that all the harnesses, all the pins, everything else. She'll build them in the garage and she puts them in a box and send them back to him.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that. We've sent out a couple, King Air B200 harnesses and stuff that we've sold to other companies. And I've had guys ask me to build them harnesses in my garage, but I don't have time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the most rewarding part, I think, is actually making the harness yourself, because you get to pick and choose how it looks and where everything's at, and it just makes it easier as an install.
Yeah. And you can say, instead of I can give 6 inches of slack, right? If and it's kind of tight behind the panel, so I can't leave myself 8 inches of slack, but I can give myself 6 inches, where if somebody else builds it, they might give you 12 inches of slack or 1 inch of slack, and you're either trying to stretch it all the way across or you're trying to find a place to take the excess and bury it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had multiple citations seem to be the worst. And I had a Citation 501 and it was old. I mean, when I was taking apart this instrument panel for DMOD, I pulled the first panel off and I screamed. And I went and I told my engineer, I was like, please tell them to send this fucking thing back. Tell them to send it back to where it came from. I don't want to work on it. It looked like, a spider on crack cocaine had basically spewed out wires behind the wiring panel. But one of the components that I had pulled off this thing, the serial number was 0001. I mean, that's how old this plane was.
Holy cow.
But,
Jesus.
It had been taken to so many different mom and pop shops that, you get new guys there, or just mechanics who have no business playing with wires. No offense to anybody out there that, is a mechanic that thinks that they can do avionics. I used to be one of those.
I was gonna say none taken on this end.
Right. No offense, take it whatsoever.
Yeah, but I've on that particular plane, there was a connector that was in the pilot's left-hand kick panel, and it was maintenance looped all the way to the co-pilot side and then back again, and you run into that stuff all the time. And when you finally do your final fitment of your harness, you have to make sure it doesn't hit controls or anything. And so that's always probably, I say final time, it is my least favorite thing to do as far as avionics installation goes.
Yeah, because you got to clean it up, make it look pretty, make sure there's snake skin wherever it needs to be. There's no chafing. There's no nothing.
No riding conditions, drip loops, and all that trash.
Yeah.
Now, the other good side about building your own harness is you get to continuity check it all yourself prior to install instead of getting it from somebody else. And either maybe there being a break somewhere in the line or whatever, you know what I mean? You get to verify it's good from the start.
That's exactly right. And I'm lucky. I'm fortunate to have had, the mentors that I've had walking into avionics, not knowing anything, because I am particularly OCD about that part specifically. I mean, I've had guys where I've watched them, make windows on half of their harness for their shield ground. And then on the other half, they didn't even bother making windows, and just madness. So I would probably lose my mind if I had a harness coming in from another facility that I didn't personally touch assembling, No.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think they did that on one end of the cable, but not on the other? Is it just they ran out of time? They got lazy with it? They got
this particular guy, and we called him Dory, because he was just a forgetful human being. I mean, let's keep swimming. That was his personality. Yeah. He was just kind of an airhead. And depending on where you work and in what industry you work, you run into those guys, the guys that are just, they're just fucking not, they're not completely there. So
I can at least attest from my experiences that a lot of the technicians, their work is timed, so like you got to be able to pump out so much in a given amount of time. So when they say, okay, you're now 3 hours into a 4-hour job, what the fuck? And oh crap, and just put it together just good enough so like it can kind of at least meets the bare minimum. Right. But by bare minimum, it's like real bare. Like, and they try to hide it in such a way where like it doesn't look like they fucked up. I'm like, and then if say they got an inspector that's kind of like their buddy or who's a really lax, I'm like, it's there, it's fine, or doesn't understand anything about wires, aka myself. Yeah, it looks like it's all there. Whatever, bro. It's connected. It's mated. It doesn't look like it's going to short anything out or electrify anybody. We're good.
Well, and that's what I was going to say from my end. Mine would have been, with that to add to that is you have 6 months to do this mod or complete this project or this install or whatever else. And then 2.5 months in, they come out and give you the double finger guns and say, hey, just kidding. It's got to be done in 3 months.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. All right. Well, I guess... You know what I mean? And so that's when the corners start getting cut or things start getting missed because then you're speeding through it faster than you should be.
Right.
And what I would really say that is up to the tech doing the install, because, personally, I am of the idea that I always want my work to look good. Mm-hmm. And I want it to be good because, somebody else is going to come in behind me and touch this and they're going to be like, what company installed this? And I want them to be able to be like, if it's my work, I want them to be like, oh man, that, these guys know their stuff. And yeah, that is, the time limit is a big thing. It's, the push and pull between, corporate or management and the techs on the floor trying to figure out the best way to do this so that it's actually done correctly versus, I'm going to go cut corners, which you can't do in the avionics world. There's no cutting corners.
No, you cut corners in AVI and you're going to have, minor to catastrophic, failures come out of that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just from not doing it to standard. That's why there are standards that exist, to prevent things like that from happening. But as we know, everybody's different, just like every plane's different, and they all have their little quirks and conundrums, and some have higher standards than others. But it's interesting what you said about you want your work to look good and be good. That way, when somebody else looks at it, and you and I are cut from a similar cloth on that, is that when somebody goes and they just look at the logbook and they see my name in there and the write-ups that I do, like I'm all the way down to even the paperwork's got to look good beyond the work. Because somebody comes in and says, oh, MVP did that. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
You know, like your name, that like just that alone, they go, oh, that's cool. Or when they open up like the kick panel, right, to do some work after you at another station, and somebody goes, wow, look at this harness. That's beautiful. Like it's artwork. You know what I mean? Like when
Mhm.
things are routed properly, like, oh my gosh, and then it makes just the next guy's troubleshooting so much easier because you're not like taking apart, like you said, a methed out spider web. And trying to figure it out. It's nice and streamlined. As streamlined as you can get it, obviously, you know, you're fighting through decades worth of wiring and pipes and panels and hardware and everything else. But
Yeah. Yeah. I can attest to that, especially. I recall a bunch of times where we pull off said panels and it's either just this rat's nest of what the hell just happened? Like a tornado just went through and just ate all the wires. Oh, and then that makes it even harder, like you said, MVP, about troubleshooting this thing, because now we just have this fat bundle of wires that's just all rats nested together, and we're trying to find one break in a line. You have the tracer on or whatever you use to find the break, and you're just like, well, it's here in this rat's nest somewhere, I guess, somewhere. So it's one of those like, well, do I deep dive and try to untangle the mess, or do I just cut the whole thing and then just reshoot the whole mess? You know what I mean?
well, if you have that option, but many times, like in the corporate realm, that's not an option. You're not going to be like, oh, this bundle's screwed. We're going to give me a new one, because control, wherever control is located for that operator, is going to go get wrecked, troubleshoot it, make it look nice, and release it, send it to RTS so we can return to service here. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. Exactly that.
And because of the money, they're not going to spend to get you a new harness or whatever else. That harness spider web is now a you problem.
Right. I'm thinking of an exact story about this one when I was in the service. It had something to do with a Cobra's weapon, an AH-1 Cobra's weapon system, where this thing fucks up a lot. This one particular plane, it just the me fly, no shoot kind of thing. Like, Jesus Christ, bro. Like, your whole purpose in life is to freaking kill shit, and you're basically a fucking flying camera. That's all you fucking do. A 2-person flying camera. And it was coming to the point where, like, they've been troubleshooting this thing for days, just shooting wires and all this other shit. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And of course, controls and be like, have you fixed it yet? Every 2 minutes, have you fixed it yet? What's going on with it? So, and then the avionics realm has like this whole timetable of what they say, how long things take. So like, oh, it's going to be about 5 minutes when they really mean like 30, or, oh, we're signing it off right now, which means we have no idea what we're doing or some shit like that.
Well, and also you get like control or whatever that already have it in their heads that say, well, that job should take only about an hour.
Yeah.
But they're basing it off of past knowledge and like, well, that's what it was before. Well, you don't know what it is this time. Like, let's troubleshoot a little bit. But I feel like, and maybe, you know, Six and Coyote, you guys can attest to this too. It seems like as aviation's going, especially with avionics, we're getting further away from troubleshooting and just hit it with the parts cannon. Boom. Did that fix it? Nope. Hit it again. Boom. Did that fix it? Nope. Instead of just taking some time at the beginning and because what if it's just a small relay and not the whole part, right? Let's figure it out. But I think they get really hung up, especially in the corporate realm. If that plane's down, it's not making money. So the faster we can get it up, and let's just hit it with a bunch of parts and hopefully that fixes it. Well, what if it's a relay that's kind of sticking every so often, but you don't know? You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't know unless you troubleshot it down, pinned it out, whatever.
Yeah. That's that Danny DeVito meme. So anyway, I started swapping.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I started swapping.
That's funny.
But you're absolutely right, man. And I think the reason why for that too is because as technology progresses along, the aircraft is starting to become smart enough to tell you what's wrong. And so people just rely on that. Like, let's just pull the history recorder, or some aircraft have like what's called a hums. I'm not sure if smaller aircraft have them, but some aircraft have like a diagnostic computer that tells you what's going on with it. So they just pull up all the faults and see what happened, and like, oh, okay, this is wrong. Easy fix, C-bit clear or some shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think almost all aircraft now have a. It depends, right? Some are a little smarter than others with it, but like say the G650, for example, like it's good enough to where it'll tell you down to which components intermittent, or it'll send out codes, right? And then you go to your fault isolation manual, or maybe in your just regular maintenance manual, but there'll be a list of what those codes dictate, and then there's a whole troubleshooting tree to follow off of that. But typically, like I said in the G650, it's smart enough. It'll tell you, oh, relay such and such in this locations is intermittent or whatever, and you're like, huh. So you're like, well, I guess I know where I got to go, and you can order that part. But
right. But most aircraft nowadays, it's just more like that check engine light in your car. Like, oh, check engine light. What does that mean? Fuck.
Yeah, I got a bad cough. I'm not going to tell you what it is, though. I'm just going to tell you I got a bad cough.
It's like, it could be something in the engine. It could be just the gas cap's loose, but check engine light. Whatever.
Is it an O2 sensor? Is it the gas cap? You find out.
Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z.
I mean, would you say that's a similar from your end, Coyote?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pretty much, most 1980s plus aircraft have systems now where they, if you're smart enough, you can get into their configuration mode and see what codes is kicking and stuff like that. It, really depends on what systems are tied together and how they're tied together. So you have to have a little bit of engineering knowledge or a good engineer on your team to begin understanding that.
Now, here's a big one. Have you ever ran into any faults where everything on the troubleshooting tree, everything from everyone's seasoned experience says, oh, it's got to be this because it's throwing this fault, but it ended up being something else because, say, like a relay got stuck somewhere, or there's a break in the line somewhere, and it's starting to cause the electric current to go somewhere else and cause those other faults?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've had all kinds of components that have failed or come up as inop because there's a shorted ground, somebody cut through the wires, or a wire got broken or burned, or diodes installed backwards. That's a common problem.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. I've seen that a lot too. Diodes. I forgot all about that.
We had one guy that he just, for some reason, he couldn't wrap his mind around how a diode is drawn in STCs, and he'd go and he'd install them backwards every single time. So it got to the point where, somebody in the shop had printed out, a diode in what direction it's supposed to go. And so, every time that dude walked out of the shop, he had to look at that printout, and he still didn't get it after that. So, but yeah, I mean, there's, I've had stupid problems come up, and it was, there's always those indicators that aircraft systems let like, hey, this system isn't working. And, that's where the avionic techs really, jump in, because pilots can identify it. I think that's, the majority of problems in airplanes coming up as avionics is because, the pilots play with their instruments the most out of anything else. They're not going around and checking, the landing gear and stuff.
Now, a most recent one that we've had, MVP, you and I were there when this happened, I believe. We had an aircraft that was having problems with ignition, like it wasn't lighting off. And we're thinking, is it the spark plugs? Is it the igniter box? Is it the wiring going to it? Whatever. So we're troubleshooting this thing forever. And we're like, we can't find a problem. Where's the problem? So we do what we always do. So we start swapping. Wait, hold on. You didn't hit the igniter exciter assembly with your crescent hammer first? Shh, let's not talk about that.
I mean, that was brought up as a suggestion.
The mechanic in me is like, did you hit it?
Yeah, right. Did you hit it? That's like the first step for any mechanic, right? Did you hit it? So we started swapping parts around to see if the problem would follow wherever we put it. But nothing. We're like, what is going on with this thing? And so we're simulating all kinds of different situations where it probably would have caused the fault. Like, we'll be out there at 2 a.m. Maybe it's cold outside. Maybe that's what did it, right? So we're at 2 a.m. trying to figure it out. It still works. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And after about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, both days and night shifts are trying to figure this thing out. And we find out what caused the problem was not the aircraft itself. It was the GSC that the aircraft was hooked up to. And I'm like, wow, imagine that. And then we'll pull up the troubleshooting diagram, and it straight up says, like, ensure the GSC is properly serviced and hooked up to the aircraft correct. fucking weird. Say
But
it
you
ain't
always get
so.
those individuals. They always get the individuals that think they know more than the manual. So they're like, they just dismiss it right away. No, that can't be the case.
Yeah.
But at step number one is to check it. Did you check it? No, it's not it. I'm not even going to waste my time. You're like, okay. That's
Okay.
3 days later, 3 or 4 days later. Yeah.
So what happened with it? Oh, it was the GSC. Yeah, imagine that. Step 1,
What a
GSC.
novel concept.
Weird. This is why manuals are written to the 3rd grade level, dumbass.
Yeah, but when you got when you got 1st grade levels there, struggling.
Oh, we weren't prepared for that. We were assuming that you could read English or whatever language your manuals made in. And there was more instances like that, but that's going into like the way like advanced stuff. Like we're talking software, we're talking like equipment that we've never tried before, and this kind of going back to your upgrade stuff where we're sticking new stuff in the old airplanes. That I think is like the biggest clusterfuck in anything. Because we're trying to cram PlayStation equipment into a Game Boy, like please work.
Well, that's a good question then, Coyote. So with doing the upgrades on older aircraft and possibly those requiring different power supply requirements, do you have to upgrade the harnesses or certain components within that electrical system to be able to accommodate the new equipment versus the 2 decades older equipment that you just took out?
I mean, so the cool thing about most of these upgrades is that their engineers did a really great job in taking into account the interfacing between, new and old. Depending on what pilots want, we have to buy individual STCs per the installation. So we have, companies that we contract out for these STCs, and these engineers basically, they take OEM prints or whatever the prints are for that particular plane serial number, and they dig through them and they make sure each new component that we install is interfaced correctly with what's existing in the aircraft. Now, what it really comes down to is if I'm going through the STC when I'm doing my installation, am I double checking what the engineers have looked at? Because all they have is what they see on a screen. They can't actually look at the hard wires in front of them. So there's a lot of double and triple checking and catching little things here and there, and making sure I'm not pinning out something that is 12 volts VDC into something that's providing 26 volts AC or whatever, so that I don't fry components. And I it's trial by fire kind of thing. When you first start in avionics, that's a hard won knowledge, because you inevitably you do fry some components, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, even though the engineer was supposed to take account of that because that's what we pay them to do. I have to play engineer as well as an installer.
Yeah, so you're basically
Sure.
like a mini wizard, like 3-prong plug into 4-prong outlet. Something not right.
Yeah, I mean, we had an awesome engineer where I currently work, and this dude was a magician. We called him the ninja, and I used to tell it because this dude has been working in aviation for a long time, and every time he would go do a configuration on one of my installs or sit through configuration and teach me stuff, there would be something that wouldn't work, and I would just touch it and it would suddenly work. And he would ask me what I touched, and I'm like, I don't know, man, it's magic. So avionics is a lot of troubleshooting and rechecking work, and like 10% magic. So
Yeah, don't let the smoke out of the box.
yeah, exactly.
It was the static from your shoes, right? You touched it and it gave it just enough juice to bring it back to life.
I like to say that it's the female finesse. I touched the button a different way.
Right? It's like, ooh, whoa, someone
Point.
new.
Female finesse, yeah.
Someone's new. How are you doing?
Yeah, the airplane's like, man.
Oh, this is a gentle touch. Okay, I'm willing to work with you.
Yeah.
So the engineers, right, who might have written some of these mods or upgrades that you've done, they might be sitting in Wichita, Orlando. If it's Embraer, they're probably down in South America, in Brazil. And then, you have to do the mod at your station. Do you guys have engineers on site? Like you said, you were going through and you verify that everything's is correct there. But do you have a local engineer who's assigned to that project with you, that when you go through the drawings and you find something wrong, and then they can either do like a red line or update it on the spot for you to correct it then and there, or do they have to then take it and send it back to the original engineer who wrote that mod to get the paperwork updated and then send it back to you? How does that work?
I mean, it's kind of an all of the above situation. So yeah, I'm not sure about, most of general aviation. I don't think it's the case because our engineer is one in a million. I mean, this guy you wouldn't think he's an engineer, just the way he acts and talks. He's amazing. He's everything that I know as far as configuration comes from this guy. So, I find myself to be extremely fortunate to have access to such knowledge. But yeah, when you encounter problems like that on the installation where, something's written wrong by the engineer that originally drew the STC, I will typically go to mine, double and triple check unless, it's a problem that I know that I can handle on my own, that it's like, okay, this is obvious, it's wrong. And he will, if it's a compounded problem that's like, okay, this is 2 + 2 = pineapple. I'll have him, do some research into it to make sure that I'm interfacing the equipment correctly. But if not, if it's something that's like, okay, that's an obvious issue, he'll contact the original STC drawer and have them updated. So just so they don't, sell the wrong STC to the next guy.
Here's a question for you and Shoreline. What's been like one of the most ridiculous gripes you guys have heard as far as the electronics portion is concerned?
Let me think on that. Go ahead.
Oh man. Ridiculous gripes. Honestly, it's more so just stupid people. I mean, just like
of the time.
routing things wrong, or like I mentioned a story in a previous episode where, we ran an electrical cable backwards, where we had the wrong end in the air and stuff like that. And the other part for me is messy cables, because of what I do is so temporary, because I don't have as much install experience. I'm mostly a show guy. Keeping your cables clean is necessary for troubleshooting, because you're going to be troubleshooting because you're putting a show in a place that isn't supposed to have a show, right? So everything is temporary and you have to do everything from the ground up. And if you aren't set up for success, and you could hold somebody's hand all the way through it and they can still do it wrong. Like it blows my fucking mind. Like, it is ridiculous. So yeah, that is what I would say is my biggest gripe personally, is just people not paying attention to what they're doing.
Well, yeah, especially in your case, man. We're not in our cases, we're talking like 26 VAC max, Yours is like more like 400 volts, 400 amps. Like,
yeah, it's true.
And then especially when the bass drops, you're really pulling power at that point,
Yeah, but even just for like the small signal cable, like your normal XLR cable that, you've got 48 microphones on a stage and all of them have a cable attached to them. So you just got to know how to do it neatly. Because first off, there's going to be pictures taken of every single event. So that's something you're already going to be in the spotlight in terms of that. And then, there's no set standard of how it should be. Case in point, go to any bar show and it's pretty messy usually. But especially once you get up to a professional level, like it's kind of a no-brainer. There are ways to do it right, and a lot of people don't realize that.
Right. Especially because of you guys, like you said, you're more temporary, so you really you almost don't care because you got to pack it up and leave again. But even so, like you said, like if there's a problem and and there's a rat's nest everywhere, it's going to be hard to try to troubleshoot this on the fly as the show's going. So, yeah.
Well, in Shoreline, do you guys have manuals you're working to? For aviation, we got manuals, or are supposed to have manuals for everything. Are you guys under the same operation? Do you guys have manuals for these setups, or is it just kind of grandfathered knowledge that's taught to the new guy, and then the new guy teaches the next new guy, and it just so on down the line?
It really depends on who your engineer is, and who is running the show. Like, I know what I've done for venues in the past is I'll come up with a whole wiring diagram and just kind of lay it out for everybody. Say, hey, this is how wiring on the left side of the stage is going to go. This is how wiring on the right side of the stage is going to go. This is where all the cables are coming from, and try to give that information out to as many people as I can, to try to make it as straightforward as possible, and that helps. But you still have those people that just don't don't get it, don't understand, don't take the time to do it right. And yes, there is a time crunch. And ultimately, the cleaner you are on the in, the faster the out is going to be. Is kind of my, my method of thinking is more load in for the load out. So the cleaner it is when you go in, the faster it comes out. So the happier everybody is. When you have stagehands that are on a 4-hour call, they're just trying to get it done as fast as they can, because they get paid for 4 hours, whether they work an hour, a half hour, or 4 hours. So
Yeah. How about you, Coyote? Same question. Most ridiculous gripe you've heard.
Personally, most of the ridiculous gripes or squawks that I deal with are usually operator error. Like we have pilots to bring their planes in, like, oh, this component doesn't work at all. And I'm like, did you push your circuit breaker in, sir? Just things like that where complacency, is prevalent. But outside of, operator error, there's a lot of old school components out there that just weren't built for interfacing. Like we had a Citation 560 brought in where the shade-in converter was just not talking to the other systems on certain aspects of this install that, our sister company had done. And I spent, probably a month and a half, maybe 2 months chasing this gripe that, we just never figured out. These two systems just didn't want to talk to each other. And I replaced all of the wiring and I, ohmed everything out and everything checked good. And we called all of the tech reps and all the engineers and, this stupid gripe that just never went away. And just, that was probably the dumbest troubleshooting, dumbest gripe I've ever dealt with, was one that just never got solved because the components didn't want to interface with each other.
No, you said the pilots, did you push in your circuit breaker? That reminded me of a time where the same thing, you get called out and they're like, well, this and that. And you look up at the circuit breaker panel and it's pulled and collared. And you're like, okay, well, that tells me. So I go look at the MEL list and it's on the MEL list, right? It's not a safety flight component. You're like, okay, well, it's written up here. And you look at the aircraft and you're like, well, it's in op for this reason. It says right here in the book. And that's why there's a collar on it. Oh, yeah, I saw the collar, but I just wanted to see if it would work. And you're like, what? Thanks for wasting my time, I guess. Like, I'm still going to charge you for this. Like, I don't know.
Waste his time 2016, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
So similar with this, but to both of you, is we'd have a pilot that says, "Hey, my component is not working." Okay, what's wrong with it? Oh, it's not working in the OFF position. Like, excuse me, excuse me.
Yeah, are you messing with me right now?
Yeah, it's like, are you like, is this a joke? Are you really fucking with me? And he's like, dead ass serious, right? Like, no, it doesn't work in the OFF position. I'm like, okay, question. What does OFF position stand for? Oh, and he looks at me with the straightest of faces, like 1,000-yard stare, straight face. I'm like, oh, it stands for on for flight. I'm like, okay. Okay, back up. I'm assuming that somebody told you this, and you being as gullible as you are, I kind of believe you. So what does on stand for? What does on mean?
Well, when they look at you and say OFF stands for on for flight, and you just look back at them and say, am I a joke to you? Because that's how it feels.
Are you messing with me, man? Like, are you? Is this your rich boy way of telling me I'm stupid? What's going on?
Put your clown nose on.
Is this some weird flex that I don't get?
Right? Or what's that one meme? Like, I'm sorry, is this a poor people joke? I'm too rich to understand. Let me put my clown nose and my wig and do my makeup real fast. All right, go. Say that again.
It is like that though. I'm like, oh, sorry, real quick. Just come out from the back with your rainbow wig on and a big red nose. Okay, I'm ready to hear your request now. What's the issue?
Right. Or another one's like, oh, the weight on wheel switch doesn't work in the air. Like, say it ain't so.
Say that one more time. Weight on wheels
does not work in flight. Weird. At that point, like you gotta mess with it. You gotta start trolling at that point. Like, oh, okay. How does weight work in the air? It's like, bro, you're the one with the college degree. You tell me.
Wait, hey, man, the weight on wheels switch doesn't work in the air. Okay, ops check satisfactory then? Like, you just tell me that you ops checked it? What's going on?
It's supposed to do that?
Could not duplicate gripe on ground.
Yeah,
Right.
CND.
Could not duplicate. Certified safe for flight.
So I'm going to jump back a little bit when we were talking about mods and the engineers earlier, and my phone was kind of cutting out. But so let's say you do find an issue in the drawings or the paperwork or the mod or whatever else, and you get with your engineer, and he's got to get back with the original writer of that mod. Do you have to stop work until you get the updated paperwork back, or are you cleared to press on until and then you'll eventually just get the updated paperwork?
Oh, no, you always press on. So everything in private and in general aviation, as far as installs go and service work, and I'm sure you know this, is time driven. It's time sensitive. Money is time and time is money. So you jump to something else. You jump to the next connector to pin out or the next component to work into.
Yep, and the reason I asked that is that was my experience in that realm of aviation as well. But just for some of the listeners out there that might not have any general aviation experience and it's been all military, and like, what do you mean you just press on? You can't press on without the updated paperwork. No, it's in the non-military world, like you said, it's all time and money driven. So the faster you get it done and that thing's hauling passengers around, the more it's making money, and that's all that matters to operators.
How many instances, MVP, you and I have pushed through of certain things that were really quite, I mean, if this were audited, it would be pretty questionable, but the fact that it's waiverable, that's the big one, waiverable, that we just like, yeah, drive on. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, more often than not. Or certain things where you're like, nah, we should probably hold off and get engineering's feedback before we press on. Like, yeah, no, just keep going. But other stuff, you're like, this is pretty self-explanatory. Like Coyote was saying earlier, like it's really obvious. 2 + 2 = pineapples. That's an obvious mistake. And like, no, we definitely need to get every engineer on site involved and get their opinion before we move on. But okay.
But I have seen some like, oh, it's cool. We want pineapples. Like, wait a minute. So you weren't expecting the 4, you were expecting pineapples? Like,
why doesn't it say that in the paperwork then?
Yeah.
Well, we were just kind of seeing what would pan out.
oh.
And pineapples is what we want. Oh, okay.
So why didn't you just say that in the first place? Well, it would have been faster if we just did it that way. You would have seen it a lot easier. Like, am I a joke to you?
Have I offended you in any way? Like, that's what you like. What did I do? Who hurt you? Who hurt you in your past?
Who hurt you? Oh man. Closing thoughts, MVP.
I'm not the best with Avi. Those who are, it's really kind of impressive to watch people read drawings. The use of a multimeter, or what's the a Megger unit for other applications. And just being able to read all those values, fine details, and make it into something that keeps an aircraft in the air for years and years and years with no issues. It's pretty impressive. So again, hats off to all you who have made your careers in that and made names for yourselves. Positive names, that is.
Positive. Any final takeaways, Coyote?
I'm happy to finally be on here. You've been asking me for a little while to come on and talk to you guys, so it was great. Kind of imparting, my observations, having no avionics experience prior to, where I'm at in life right now, and having been a mechanic with you in the Marine Corps 6. That was, I'm happy to have talked to you guys today.
Hey,
We're
thank
happy
you
to
for
have
coming
you.
on as well.
So what I heard is we wore you down.
It's nap time.
I'm just messing.
Yeah.
We do appreciate you coming on, though.
Yeah. And again, like from a mechanic standpoint, we generally talk a lot of smack about avionics and electricians in general. And from our point of view, that's where 99% of an aircraft's problem comes from, is through its electronics. And for those that actually have to go in there and deal with it, that's a spectrum of expertise in itself. Like, it's not just one shot does it all, or one person can do it all. It's kind of like, this person does wires, this person does troubleshooting, this person does reroutes and upgrades and stuff like that. It's not too often you see someone do all of it at once, and when they do, they're pretty boss as far as that's concerned. So for those of you guys out there doing the avionics work, just know that your guys' longevity is only going to get bigger, because now we're moving into smarter aircraft, we're moving on to smarter technology, air quotes smarter. So if for all you guys that are mechs, you might want to start dabbing into the electronics portion, because everything is eventually going to be fly-by-wire and nuclear powered or something at that point. So we're all going to eventually be wearing Iron Man suits or some shit.
Yeah, I mean, definitely get that cross training in, because most aircraft now can be controlled just through a laptop. It's pretty impressive what you can do just via laptop.
Yeah, no kidding. Coyote, thanks again for coming. Everybody, thanks for listening on to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, later.
Have a good day, everyone.
We'd like to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to keep producing episodes, bring on guests, and keep Shoreline ever the happy to produce our show. With special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Stephanie Boatman, Jenny Dignan, Ryan Frushauer, Daniel Schubert, and Steven Shivers. Thank you all, our patrons, so much for all your support and again, your patronage. If you have ideas, topics, or stories for the show, or you would like to be a guest on the show, visit cancelformaintenance.com and drop us a line on our contact us section. We will do whatever we can to get you and or your ideas onto the show. Check out our sponsor, Rockwell Time, for all sorts of outdoors and sporting apparel such as watches, safety rated sunglasses, and snowboarding goods. Visit rockwelltime.com, use code CX4MX, and save 10% off your purchases. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/cancelformaintenance. Patronage again allows us to continue making episodes and maintain our gear. Patrons also get exclusive perks such as access to our Discord and discounts to our upcoming merch.